Well, hello and welcome, awesome students. Dr. J here with a little midweek check-in, post-grade feedback. This is just a little general feedback just from some observations that I've seen within your submissions as a whole. And I want to clarify that I think by and large, there's a number of students that are on track right where they should be. There's a handful of students maybe that are at least in the ballpark and just need a couple little fine adjustments there. And then there's maybe a few students that are a little bit off track, and I want to help redirect and get you on track for success. As some of the things I'm about to talk about are not so much how I want it in my submissions in this class, but more or less how things should be in your submissions or how you should be utilizing some of these things that I'm about to show you. So I do want to clarify that kind of stuff. And when I talk about your next class, I'm not talking about the 1 or 2 general ed requirements that you need to complete before you graduate. I'm talking about the graduate class that you're going to be having soon as you start your graduate school program or your graduate work program, as most of you are headed in that direction. I find that when I teach this class, probably somewhere in the range of 90+% of the students that are completing this class are going to be headed to graduate school sometime in the near future. And so if you don't have a plan for that, make sure you're on it. Fortunately, that's somebody else's stuff to deal with. But again, work with your advisors, make sure you're on track with your academic programs, so just support your goals. But let me dive into it. And let me first say that this class is really interesting in terms of grading. You've seen probably by now that a lot of these submissions are highly personal based. Instructors tend to really love this class, or maybe not so much love this class. I'm in the love this class category, although submissions are a little bit more challenging to grade because things aren't so black and white in this class, but as I call, varying shades of gray. When we look at things, there's not always a right or wrong answer. In fact, most often there's not a wrong answer. And as I tell students a lot, the only wrong answer is the answer that you can't support with the research. And I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But I also like to clarify, I'm not grading your personal thoughts and opinions. I'm not grading your personal identities. I'm not grading your social initiatives that you believe in or the type of work that you want to do. That stuff, I'm okay with all of it. As long as it's legal and you feel good about it, great. In fact, I most often won't really provide any feedback that's specific to that kind of stuff, with some rare exceptions. In some cases, students are very broad or very general about some of the things they talk about, and I might just try to rein you in a little bit to be specific about 1 or 2 things instead of 10. Instead of giving me a general overview of 10 things, be specific and detailed about 1 or 2 things is better. So that's along those lines. But again, your thoughts, your opinions, your personal stuff is what it is, as long as you feel good about it. And as I always say, as long as it's legal and not hurting anybody, we're all okay with it, okay? Your thoughts, your expressions, this is a safe place, so feel free to put that stuff out there. So let me dive into it and talk about some of these things because it's going to help get you all on track for success. And again, most students are doing a great job on this stuff, but I think this is some good feedback that will benefit all of you. So the first thing that I want to make note on is the organization and structure of your submission. So make sure that you're organizing your document well. It's a good idea to always, as you're complete, you've done your kind of final proof and edit, just scroll down the document and see, is it all well organized? The margins are all in alignment? Put things into blocks where the information should go. Subtitles are ideal to help identify specific sections. It's one thing when we have 3 questions that you're answering and you've written 3 paragraphs. It's very easy to see. Paragraph 1 is question 1 and so on. But sometimes question 1 requires 2 paragraphs, and questions 2 and 3 only need 1 paragraph. And so when you clarify things, it just makes it really easy for me to grade. Also makes it really easy for you to organize. And quite honestly, again, this is how your submissions should be. APA formatting is your preferred formatting style for all submissions. And I stress that because in many cases, you're going to have an opportunity to structure your documents in an APA style document where I could give you some feedback on some things or point some things out if you're a little off base without any significant point loss if you're off base on some things. So do that. Work in that direction because, again, it gives me an opportunity to give you a little extra feedback on your submissions and point some things out. And some of you are going to see that, you might have lost a point or 2 points on some things if you're a little bit off. It's really just kind of a red flag to draw your attention to some things. So take a look at that. And it's not like I'm this, crazy wacko APA guy, which actually I am, but I'm not trying to be super punitive on you guys in terms of formatting and things like that. But I want to point these things out because it will soon be more important in your submissions. And again, make sure that your referencing is on track as well. So again, take every opportunity to practice these things in your submissions. It will serve you well. At this point in your academic career, APA formatting should be second nature to you. You shouldn't even have to think about it. It should just be autopilot on your submissions. There's some software tools available to you, things that I didn't have in graduate. Actually, in graduate school, we did have a software tool that was really valuable. I personally use a tool called Perla now, which is really great. I think I've put some links in some of the updates that I've sent out. But it'll actually do all of your APA formatting for you in exact format, so you never have to worry about it. I personally think these tools are invaluable for graduate school, so something you'll want to look at for the future. If you have some questions on that, let me know. So the other thing that I want to talk about was more specific to the research. And so I want to make sure that you are all on track with how you're utilizing research within your submissions. Again, a lot of students are doing a really nice job at this. I just want to help fine tune a few things with some students to ensure that you're on track. And again, I think this is some good information for all students so you understand the flow of how these things work. There is a big difference between adding citations and some references at the end and actually applying the information in the research to validate your arguments. And in some cases, what I'm seeing is students are just adding an in-text citation or a reference at the end, and there's not really any clear understanding of why they are adding this research or what they're talking about by adding these things, okay? So it's not just about you're reading the objectives of the assignment and it's talking about how you have to use research, or you hear me talk about, oh, you have to add research for your submission, so you put a citation at the end of the paragraph because Fisk talked about it in that article, but it's about using the information that Fisk talked about to validate what it is that you just said, okay? And I'm going to give you some examples and clarify what I mean here in just a moment, but please make sure you're using the research to prove and validate what it is you're saying, okay? We use the research to validate our statements, those observations that you're making, that analysis that you're making. Here's why. I talk about this often as like judge and jury. If any of you have ever had the fortune or misfortune to be on a jury, you've been given instructions that said you're only allowed to utilize the information that's presented to you. In other words, the attorneys are going to try to prove their case, right? They're going to argue their case. They're going to give you the data, the evidence, okay? The data that validates what it is they're saying. And you look at the evidence and you say, okay, yep, that is what you say it is. That's what we're doing in research. And we're writing up or doing our write-ups is we're presenting that information back in a format that validates what it is that we're seeing, okay? I'm going to give you a basic formula that will help you conceptualize exactly what I just talked about, okay? So that if you're struggling with some of these things, I want you, it's a great time to take some notes, think about how this breaks down, again, in a very simple format, and you can practice this and you will get better at it over time. So here's the basic formula. And let me first say, I always think of this in terms of diagnostics because it's an easy way to look at it. And you'll understand this in just a moment. We're going to make an observation, okay? We see something that's going on and we make that observation, obviously in our writing. We make the observation about what it is that we see, and then we're going to provide some type of analysis about what we think that might be, okay? Here's the things that are going on. Here's what I think it is. And then we're going to support that analysis with the research. Okay? That's it. Ta-da! This is like the key to success in your submissions and applying the research is just these three basic things. Now, I'm going to give you an example paragraph to follow or help better understand what it is that I'm talking about. But again, think in terms of diagnostics. I'm seeing a particular behavior. This is what I think it is. This is why I think it is. And the why part comes from the research. We read a research study that talks about the diagnostics of what it is that we're looking at, and we add some of that information, summarize some of that information into our written summation of what it is that we're writing about, okay? Whatever that might be, milestones, projects, video reflections, etc. And as I talk about diagnostics, think in terms of these video reflections that you're watching, where you're picking up on particular behaviors, describing what you think it might be. Now you can add the research to your statements. So here is an example paragraph. And I want to stress and clarify that this is an example. There's a lot of different ways to present the information. Stylistically, you might have a different style, different format. As you read some of the research, you're going to see that as well. By the way, if you're reading good research, it's all going to have references in it anyway, so you'll get accustomed to writing in this style. But I want you, again, to conceptualize it in this way. Bobby has displayed several problematic behaviors in the classroom, such as an inability to maintain attention and complete tasks on time. That's your observation. You watched Bobby, he's doing some kooky things in the classroom, okay? His behavior suggests that he may have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This is my personal analysis of what I think it might be. Now, because I read a research study on kids with ADHD, and I can summarize a line or two from that by saying ADHD is often characterized by an inability to maintain concentration and focus, as well as the motivation to complete assigned tasks. Okay, so again, this was just something that I made up to illustrate this, this path, if you will, this key. So utilize the research to validate your arguments. Okay, my argument is his behaviors suggest ADHD. How do I know? Because the research, here's the research information that supports that analysis. Okay, hopefully this is making sense. And again, stylistically, you might present it differently. You might say something like, according to Jones, ADHD is often characterized by an inability to maintain blah, 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 okay? You might say something to the effect, you might start your paragraph by saying ADHD is this, this, and this. Studies show that kids with ADHD have problems in the classroom with these types of behaviors. In my observation of Bobby, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you might frame things differently, organize differently. Again, stylistically, you're going to develop that as you go. But if you're struggling with this, this might be a starting point for you so that you can start to present this information in a way that is much stronger. That's what we're looking for, gang. Strong arguments in our write-ups. When you go in and do a diagnostic assessment, you got to prove why you think it is what you believe it to be, okay? So hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully this gets you on track, if you're a little off base, and hopefully if you're kind of in that middle zone, it just clarifies some things. And if you're in that place where you totally get it, maybe you've got a way to look at it a little bit differently and think about it in a way that will constantly reinforce your arguments. But that's ideally what you want to do, not just shove a bunch of research and citations in there because you think that's what we want to see. So again, start with those articles, read the articles, take that information, answer the questions from those articles, and you'll do very well. If you have some questions on this, don't hesitate to reach out. Again, please, please, please read your feedback, take a look at your submissions, figure out what worked, what didn't work, apply some of these principles, and I'm sure you'll see some improvements in your submissions. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a fantastic week. I look forward to seeing your submissions.